All right, so we know what the endocrine system is, and the endocrine system is the way that the body communicates through vast distances, either from the hypothalamus up here, all the way to the kidneys down here, controlling your urine, or your growth hormone controlling how your bones grow, whatever. It's just the way that your body can communicate through vast distances in it. And now the endocrine system, now these hormones are released by certain glands. That's what they're called in the endocrine system. And these glands control the release of the hormones. And in this video, we'll quickly go over the different types of glands, because understanding the glands is the first step to understanding what the hell the endocrine system is, what all these things, all these things that you have to memorize are, and everything. So we'll start with the very first gland up here that I drew. The very first gland, we'll erase this gland shenanigan nonsense. So the very first gland up here is the hypothalamus. Now the hypothalamus is the most important one to know about, and the hypothalamus is essentially like a double agent kind of. It's part of the nervous system, so it controls a lot of things in our body, such as our heartbeat, our blood pressure, breathing, all that good stuff that we need. But it's also part of the endocrine system, so it has like a dual role. Now its nervous system role is tied with its endocrine role, and its endocrine role is it controls it understands when our body needs the release of these hormones. So without the hypothalamus, we can't do shit with any of this endocrine stuff that we're talking about. And for that reason that it controls everything, it understands when our body needs it. It's called the control gland. So I'm going to say it's the most important gland because that's the pituitary, but it's the control gland. It controls, without this, the pituitary is useless. It controls everything. So we have the hypothalamus is the control gland. It controls the pituitary, receives signals from the brain. So every single day you have all these signals coming in from the brain about your body, like, yo, our body is peeing, our blood pressure is low, we're hungry, we want to sleep, blah, blah, just telling you. The brain is just telling your hypothalamus to do all this stuff. The hypothalamus understands it, and it releases certain hormones, they're called releasing hormones, directly underneath it to this little bean-shaped dot guy called the pituitary. Now, the pituitary is considered the master gland in the body. It doesn't make any hormones, but it releases a majority of the hormones after the hypothalamus in the body. Now, the pituitary has an anterior pituitary and a posterior pituitary. We're not going to talk about the specific hormones just this second, but just know that it has an anterior. So I'm completely wrong because this pen sucks. Best Buy is a horrible place to buy things, but you have an anterior and a posterior. So you have these two sacs or parts of the pituitary which release different hormones. They're responsible for different things in the body. So you have the hypothalamus and the pituitary. That's the master gland. This is what reacts from all the signals coming from the hypothalamus. Now, you also have right here the thyroid the thyroid gland. Now the thyroid gland's in your neck. It's that bulge, it's the Adam's apple in your neck. You can feel it. This is responsible for controlling everything in your body that has to deal with metabolism. So if you're losing too much weight, if you can't lose weight, or if you're hungry really fast, or if you're not hungry, whatever, if you don't have energy, you have way too much energy, all this is due because of the thyroid. Thyroid controls everything, so if you can't lose weight and you're exercising, maybe check out your thyroid gland because you're not producing enough thyroid hormone. Or if you're losing too much weight, but you're not really exercising or eating well, you probably have something up with your thyroid and it's like an overdrive and making a lot of thyroid hormone. Now, the hormone that controls this is, of course, T3 and T4. These are the thyroid hormones that we'll go into more detail. And then down here we have behind the thyroid, you also have the parathyroid gland. The parathyroid gland. And what this does is this controls calcium balance in the body because you don't want too much calcium, you don't want too little. Just like anything in the body, you want homeostasis, you want just the right amount. You don't want it to be just perfect. Too much, you'll die. Too bad, too little, you'll die. So you want it just perfect. Of course, that controls calcium via the hormones PTH, which are parathyroid, and calcitonin, which we'll go over into more detail later. And then over here, these two guys are the adrenal glands. You have two of them. They sit on top of the kidneys, which of course you have two of them also. And this has two parts. This has the cortex, which is the inner part, or sorry, it's the outer part, and you have the medulla, which is the inner part of the adrenal gland. Now the cortex releases cortisol and whatnot, your stress hormone. So whenever you're stressed, you release this hormone. Essentially this hormone tells your body to make more energy. So if you're stressed, you make more energy. Now the medulla is epinephrine, norepinephrine. It's part of the fight and flight. It's adrenaline. We'll use a more common term. And of course down here you have the gonads. Everyone knows what the gonads are. That's the ovaries and the testes. So everyone knows what they are. Now we'll go into more detail about the specific hormones that each of these release. So as you can see, your body's releasing a shit ton of hormones every single second because there's a lot of hormones. So the first one we'll start with is the hypothalamus. Now the hypothalamus starts everything. It's a control gland. Whenever it senses our body needs something, it releases these releasing hormones, and this is how it controls what our pituitary does. Now these releasing hormones are released from the hypothalamus, go to the pituitary. The pituitary sees these releasing hormones and knows what action to take. So it's kind of like a chain reaction. The hypothalamus releases one thing, pituitary releases another thing. That hormone goes to one of these glands in the body that we just went over. This gland we'll go over in a second. Now, of course, I have to erase everything. So the hypothalamus releases these releasing hormones. Now, it's important to know the very first steps and what these releasing hormones are. Now, the releasing hormones, unfortunately, you have to memorize these, but the releasing hormones, you have GnRH, which is gonadotrophin releasing hormone. This releases all the hormones that act on the gonads. So any hormone that's going to act down here on your ovaries and your testes is going to be released from, it's going to start with GnRH. Next, you have corticotrophin releasing hormone. This releases any hormones, so it's only really one hormone that acts on the adrenal glands to release cortisol, just like its name says. And then you have more releasing hormones. You have something called the thyroid releasing hormone, which tells the pituitary gland to release thyroid hormone. And then you have something called prolactin inhibitory hormone. Now this is a little different than the releasing hormones. Where in the releasing hormones cases, your body normally doesn't release these hormones until your hypothalamus tells it to. With the releasing hormones, your body the pituitary always releases something called prolactin, which we'll go over in a second. And prolactin causes your body to make breast milk, so it causes your breasts to release milk. Of course, men, this doesn't happen too often, hopefully. So your body is always releasing this inhibitory hormone to stop the production of prolactin. Now, in women, you also release PIH all the time to inhibit prolactin because you don't want to be releasing breast milk when you're like in a situation where you don't need to release breast milk. That's bad. But if you just had a newborn baby, and the baby is like doing his thing, whatever, and your body stops releasing this hormone PIH, and then you release your breast milk. And then, of course, when you're done, you release that hormone again, you stop it. And of course, and then, yeah. So your brain knows when to release this. When you're pregnant, when you have a baby, it releases this. So those are the hormones. Oh, actually, there's one more. Well, there's also growth hormone releasing hormone. Growth hormone releasing hormone. This releases growth hormone, which acts on every part of the body to cause growth, ironically. And then, of course, and that's from the pituitary. And now we'll go to the anterior pituitary. We'll skip the posterior right now and just go straight to the anterior pituitary. It's part of the pituitary gland, split into two sections. Now, to go with these releasing hormones, it'll make sense that the anterior pituitary has other hormones that these releasing hormones release, and of course it does. That's the way the body works. So the acronym to easily remember these is FLATPEG. Just remember FLATPEG and you remember all these hormones. Very easy acronym. F stands for follicle stimulating, so FSH. L stands for luteinizing hormone, so LH. These are really only well, of course, your men release it too, but they really only do anything in women. They cause the menstrual cycle and control all that stuff. So very important in women. And GnRH, gonadotrophin releasing hormone, releases FSH and LH. Oh, sorry, they are active in men, but they're known in women more. So GnRH releases these hormones. The A stands for adrenocorticotrophin hormone. These are released from CRH, which releases cortisol, so it's like corresponding. T stands for thyroid stimulating hormone. So TRH, thyroid releasing hormone, goes down to the anterior pituitary, releases TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. The P is for prolactin. Again, your body always releases prolactin, which causes milk letdown or release of breast milk, but your body also always releases this inhibitory hormone, which stops prolactin. And that's good because you don't want to be releasing milk when you don't want to be releasing milk. Now, G stands for growth hormone. That's, of course, everyone knows what growth hormone does. It grows every single thing in the body. Now, the posterior pituitary releases ADH and oxytocin. So it releases ADH and oxytocin. Now, ADH controls anything in the body to deal with fluid regulation. And what? Blood pressure. Because blood pressure is fluid. It's made of water. So when you release too much water in the body, your blood pressure lowers. You have too much water in your body, your blood pressure raises. And that's also if you're really lightheaded. So in fact, if you're lightheaded, that means you probably have low blood pressure. What do you do to raise your blood pressure? You drink water. It's very simple. Now, ADH causes you, of course, your kidneys pee and whatnot, and when you pee, you're releasing water, so that lowers your blood pressure somewhat. ADH causes your body to absorb more water, so you're not peeing out as much water, you're peeing out more solutes like, not glucose, but other things that you pee out, such besides water, so it raises your blood pressure. Oxytocin is released in women only. It's for uterine contractions. Again, men really don't need to release this because you don't have a uterus, so you don't really need oxytocin. So these are the main hormones, the stimulating hormones, whatnot. Now these stimulating hormones, FSH, LH, ACTH, growth hormone, not really growth hormone, but TSH, these act on these different parts, thyroid hormone, the adrenal glands, and the gonads. Now TSH, thyroid stimulating, goes to a thyroid hormone, which we talked about, which releases T3 and T4 called thyroxin, and the T3 is like idono something, whatever, some weird ass name, but T4 is the more common one, so it's control metabolism. Now ACTH goes down to these little guys and releases cortisol, and not aldosterone, which we'll talk about in another video, but it releases cortisol, which is a stress hormone. When you're stressed, your body releases this hormone, and it causes your body to make more energy, because if you're stressed, you need more energy, or at least in most cases when you're stressed. Now, if you're just stressed out, then that's not good because you don't need more energy. Now, GnRH releases FSH and LH. These follicle stimulating and luteinizing hormone. These go down to the gonads or the ovaries or the testes, and they act different ways. They cause the ovaries to release estrogen. They go through menstrual cycles. The testes to make sperm and all that good stuff. So these are the individual hormones. So you can obviously see there's a lot of fucking hormones in the body. So in any given second, our body is releasing a shit ton of hormones. There's hormones circulating in our bloodstream like crazy. So our body has to have some way to control all these hormones, which are in the next videos. This is how they bind to specific cells, how they cause their specific effects, and whether they're steroid hormones, how they act on the cells, whether the receptor is inside the cell or the receptor is outside the cell. Because you can guess that since there's so many fucking hormones, there has to be some way for these hormones to know to bind specifically to a thyroid cell or specifically to a gonad cell or an adrenal cell. Because these hormones, they're hormones. It's like thyroid stimulating hormone, but it has no idea what it's supposed to do. It doesn't know. It's not programmed to release thyroid hormone. So it has to have a way to bind to these cells. And we'll talk about how it binds to the cells in another video. But these are all the hormones in the body. Fortunately, it sucks. You have to memorize them. Just memorize flat peg and you'll be good. Because if you know the general hormones in the anterior pituitary, oh, this is FSH and LH, then you can be thinking, how does the anterior know to release these? Well, it must have a releasing hormone from the hypothalamus. And where these act on the gonads, so the releasing hormone is probably called gonadotrophin releasing hormone. So it's just that kind of logic. Thyroid hormone, thyroid stimulating, this is TSH. So what causes the pituitary to release thyroid stimulating hormone? Probably thyroid releasing hormone. Thyroid releasing hormone then goes to the thyroid gland to release T3, T4. So again, it's just a shit ton of memorization for this section.